More than 7 million voters in Cuba will participate from today until April 30th in the referendum on the Family Code. In Ecuador, the death toll after Monday's deadly floods rose to 22. Authorities also report 5 people missing and 47 injured. Heavy gunfire was heard on Tuesday in the capital of Guinea Bissau near a government compound where President Umaro Sissoco Embalo was holding a cabinet meeting. Hi, this is From the South. I am your news anchor, Diego Martin from the teleSUR studios in Havana. We begin with the news. Now, more than 7 million voters in Cuba will participate from today until April 30th in the referendum on the Family Code. According to official sources, in some 78,000 meetings, citizens inside and outside the country will be able to offer their approval, disagreement, or proposals for modifications to the project that has already received the consent of the National Assembly. And the dynamic test held between January 27th and 28th, the 12,500 constituency commissions foreseen in the process participated. Authorities foresee the handing over of the proposals in May. Prior to that date, 2 information breaks were planned. On the other hand, Elena Balseiro, president of the National Electoral Council, confirmed that everything was ready for the consultation to take place, taking into account the biosecurity conditions imposed in times of pandemic.
All measures have been taken so that everyone can participate. An invitation has been given to each voter. All conditions have been taken. We have even worked with the Ministry of Higher Education at the base and at the national level, also including student residences, places where there are mobilized people so that they can join the different meeting points and all the population can participate indistinctly and can issue their opinion.
In Costa Rica, presidential candidates will hold a debate on Tuesday, 6 days before the 2022 general elections. At least 7 presidential candidates will participate in the debate, which will be held at the Universidad Latina de Costa Rica. The transmission of the dialogue will begin with a political analysis and will last for approximately 2 hours. Let's remember that during the month of January, around 7 provincial debates were held with the participation of candidates to the Congress of the Republic. The initiative seeks to offer citizens a possibility to know the ideas, proposals, and solutions for the country's problems. And this Monday in Colombia, Jose Euclides González Marin, a social leader in the north of Cauca and the southwest of the country, was murdered. With this crime, the number of social leaders executed in Colombia so far as 2022 reaches 14. González, who is vice president of the Association of Workers of the Calacoto Farmers Reserve Zones, was killed by armed men at around 4 p.m. local time in the El Plejo Rural Reserve Zone. The Institute for Development and Peace Studies and other human rights organizations announced the murder of the leader, who is also an active member of labor and human rights organizations in the area. In the past, figures show that 1,300 social leaders have already been murdered since the signing of the peace accords. The systematic assassination of peace signatories, Iván Duque government's failure to comply with the agreements, gave rise to a series of lawsuits for violations of fundamental rights, which the Constitutional Court judged to be a flagrant and massive violation, and ordered the government of Duque to protect effectively the ex-combatants in the reinsertion process. To learn more about the current situation, our correspondent Hernan Tobar brings us the details.
3 peace signatories was known: John Jairo Villar, whose homicide was in Santa Marta, Magdalena; Leonardo Martinez, murder in Caquetá; and Juvenal Ballén, whose crime was reported in Saravina, Arauca. The number already exceeds 300 signatories murdered since 2016. The last of them was in the process of reincorporation and was part of the cooperative Multiactiva Esperanzas de Paz, COEPAZ, developing a livestock project in Saravina, Arauca.
We do not hesitate to place the responsibility on the current government of Iván Duque, not only by action and omission, but also because it is clear that the government itself, headed by Iván Duque and the government party members, have unleashed in recent years a policy of stigmatization and finger-pointing against our party, against the leaders and against the militants.
These murders occurred when the Constitutional Court declared that there was a massive violation of the peace agreement, issuing a ruling declaring a state of unconstitutionality because fundamental rights were seriously compromised, affecting a significant group of people, in this case the peace signatories.
In effect, their fundamental rights to life, personal integrity and peace were ignored by the protection unit, and it issued specific orders to restore these rights. The Constitutional Court, also considering the high number of signatories of the final peace agreement who have been victims of homicide, and the low level of implementation of the rules on security guarantees for demobilized combatants also decide to declare the unconstitutional state of affairs.
In view of this determination by the High Court, President Ivan Duque stated that he respects the ruling, but pointed out an alleged investigation failure and lack of depth, for which he exempted his government from responsibility.
Dissidents of FARC are the ones who have killed them. The ELN is behind this, the Gulf clan, armed groups that we have fought.
Among the measures demanded by the court to Duque's government are the re-evaluation on the risks faced by the signatories, as well as the protection schemes in the former training and reincorporation spaces, strengthening them or determining new ones. It also orders the government to adopt the economic and security measures provided for in the peace agreement to facilitate the effective reintegration of the demobilized and prioritize the regions affected by the violence of the armed groups and the absence of the state.
Hernán Darío Tobar, Telesur, Bogotá, Colombia.
On Tuesday in the Brazilian city of Sao Paulo, a portion of the marginal Tete highway collapsed, leaving no casualties. Local media reports the incident occurred near a subway line and a construction site, forcing authorities to close 500 meters of highway, causing traffic disruptions. Transport authorities said the crater opened after a sewage pipe broke out during excavation works. Sao Paulo firefighters reported there were no casualties. However, 2 construction workers are under medical care after they came into contact with sewage-contaminated water. We'll be right back after this short break. Don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. Today, Ecuador continues to search for missing people after the deadly mudslide that took place last Tuesday in the sector of La Gasca. The heaviest flooding to hit Ecuador in 2 decades has killed at least 23 people, flooding homes, swamping cars, and sweeping away athletes and spectators on a sports field. According to Ecuador's emergency service, there are so far 20 missing and 47 injured in Quito. Rain that drenched Quito for 17 straight hours caused a deluge that damaged roads, agricultural areas, clinics, schools, a police station, and electric power substation. Locals and soldiers with rescue dogs still search the entire area for survivors. In the African continent, the region known as the Horn of Africa experiences a harsh drought threatening millions of people. Somalia, Kenya, and now Ethiopia have raised the alarm about the latest climate shock to a fragile region traversed by herders and others trying to keep their animals and themselves alive. In Ethiopia's Somali region, people have suffered the woes of a drought that had been forecast 3 straight rainy seasons. According to UNICEF, more than 6 million people in Ethiopia are expected to need urgent humanitarian aid by mid-March. In neighboring Somalia, more than 7 million people require assistance, the Somali NGO consortium said in a separate statement. The NGO added this could be the region's worst drought in 40 years. UNICEF's Ethiopia representative said Tuesday that some water sources were drying up or are already dry and pointed out to the need to rehabilitate wells, drill boreholes, and get water to health and nutrition systems. On Monday, the Spanish multinational company Repsol expressed its full willingness to collaborate with Peruvian authorities in order to guarantee the supply of products and ensure the resumption of operations, despite the fact that the Peruvian government will order the loading and unloading of oil tankers. The oil company expressed its willingness to guarantee the presence of essential products that allow the development of the country, since it supplies 40% of the Peruvian fuel market. They also rejected the government's consideration that Repsol's operations are disproportionate and unreasonable after more than 10,000 barrels of crude oil were spilled in the province of Callao on January 15th. At the present, the oil cleanup operations are still active. Early on Monday, the Peruvian government decided to suspend the company's activities in the country.
First, We call for a halt to all hydrocarbon loading and unloading activities in the Peruvian Sea by the company Repsol, until it provides us with technical guarantees that no further damage will be done to the sea that belongs to all Peruvians.
Now, Russian President Vladimir Putin said on Tuesday that the United States ignored most of Russia's security concerns. The Russian head of state said during a press conference that Russian concerns were ignored by the United States and NATO. He added that they did not consider key demands concerning the non-expansion of NATO, the non-deployment of offensive weapons systems near Russia's borders, and the return of the bloc's military infrastructure in Europe. The Russian president also stressed that if Ukraine, which is being militarized by the West, joins and attacks the Russian peninsula of Crimea, Russia will have to confront NATO eventually. And we stay in Russia since that country assumed the rotating presidency of the United Nations Security Council for the month of February amid tensions with Ukraine and Western powers. As Moscow has reiterated on numerous occasions, the West is carrying out an anti-Russian campaign and accuses him of allegedly preparing to attack Ukraine, while the North Atlantic Treaty Organization seeks to increase its military presence in the area. The day before, the Russian representative to the multilateral body once again raised these concerns before the UN Security Council at a meeting convened by the United States. According to Russia's permanent representative to the United Nations, Vasily Nebenzia, Washington is trying to mislead the world community about the real situation in Ukraine. And while Russian President Vladimir Putin met with Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban in Moscow, the leaders discussed bilateral ties as well as security issues on the European continent and regional conflicts. Prime Minister Orban has taken a softer line on the Ukraine crisis and fellow North Atlantic Treaty Organization and other EU members. The Hungarian senior diplomat said his country aimed to reach an agreement to increase the country's gas imports from Russia at a time when some in Europe accused Moscow of orchestrating an energy crisis to pressure European countries.
I have high hopes that we can work together for many years to come. I would like to assure you that no EU leader wants war and conflict.
Now let's take a look at the other side of the conflict. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky signed a decree on Tuesday to increase the size of the country's armed forces by 100,000 troops over 3 years and raise soldiers' salaries. In an address to Parliament, the head of state said the decree did not mean war with Russia was imminent and urged lawmakers to stay calm and united, not to sow panic and to exploit a standoff with Moscow for political gain. North Atlantic Treaty Organization member states have rallied around Ukraine in recent weeks, with the United States, Britain, and Poland among countries offering military aid and calling for tough sanctions on Moscow if Russia launches an attack. Moscow denied any plans to invade Ukraine, but has demanded sweeping security guarantees from the West, including a promise that Kiev can never join NATO. We have more stories coming up after this final short break. Please stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. After sustained gunfire was heard on Tuesday near the seat of government in Guinea Bissau, President Umbaro Sissoco Embalo says the situation is under control. Armed men surrounded the government palace on Tuesday, where President Umbaro Sissoco Embalo and Prime Minister Nuno Gomes Nabiam were believed to have gone to attend a cabinet meeting. Embalo said later that many members of the security forces had been killed in a failed attack against democracy. This would be the second coup in West Africa and as many weeks after the military seized power in Burkina Faso last week. President Embalo says the situation is under control in a message posted on an informal Twitter account and through a statement issued on his official Facebook page as well. On Tuesday, Amnesty International called Israel an apartheid state that treats Palestinians as an inferior racial group. The comprehensive report documents show mass confiscations of Palestinian land and property, unlawful killings, forcible transfers, restrictions on movement, and denial of nationality and citizenship to the Palestinian population are elements of a system that, under international law, amount to apartheid. The system is maintained through violations of rights that, according to Amnesty International, constitute a crime against humanity as defined by the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court and the Convention Against Apartheid. Separatist rebels have killed 4 Senegalese soldiers and are holding 7 hostage after a clash on the border between Senegal and Gambia last week. The Senegalese army said in a statement that 3 soldiers died in the fighting and a 4th died from the wounds several days later. Another 7 soldiers are being held hostage by the Movement of Democratic Forces of Casamance. The MFDC is behind a low-intensity breakaway conflict in Senegal's southern region of Casamance that dates back to 1982 and has claimed several thousand lives. The soldiers were part of the peacekeeping mission from the West African bloc ECOWAS in Gambia, which is known as ECOMIG. The clashes took place as soldiers were on an operation to combat illegal logging on the border with Gambia. International envoys of the Economic Community of West African States and the United Nations met in Burkina Faso's capital with coup leader Lieutenant Colonel Paul Henry Sandaogo Damiba. The international envoys also met with Roch-Marc Christian Kabore, who was ousted as president after the military junta seized power on January 24th and is under house arrest. According to the West African delegation leader Shirley Ayor Korbochwe, the foreign minister of Ghana, the discussions were frank and open to suggestions and proposals. The talks came shortly after the African Union suspended Burkina for the January 24th takeover. ECOWAS had suspended Burkina Faso from its ranks and warned of possible sanctions pending the outcome of the talks with the junta.
During this extraordinary summit, the heads of states not only condemned Burkina Faso, but they also asked the mission come and exchange with the authorities here to take stock on the situation and see what the future holds. They also asked that during this visit we meet with the president, which is what we have just done. We have seen that he is in good health, and he appears to be. But we will obviously report to the heads of state on the exchanges we have had. We had frank exchanges.
Anti-coup protesters across Myanmar defied a junta order not to mark the first anniversary of the military's power grab with a silent strike and clapping protests on Tuesday. Residents across Yangon and in the second city of Mandalay clapped en masse, marking the end of a silent strike against the coup. The military takeover that ended the Southeast Asian country's brief democratic interlude and ousted civilian leader Aung San Suu Kyi has triggered mass protests and a crackdown on dissent. According to a local monitoring group, the junta has killed more than 1,000 civilians since the takeover. Ahead of the anniversary, the junta had threatened to seize businesses that shutter and warned that noisy rallies or sharing anti-military propaganda could lead to treason or terrorism charges. As people across Myanmar marked the anniversary of last year's military takeover by shutting businesses and staying home in a nationwide silent strike, what appeared to be several thousand people in the capital Naypyidaw rallied in support of the generals. Video provided by the military authorities showed a crowd of people listening to speeches in a field before marching down the streets, with some carrying banners. Naypyidaw is a seat of government and is home to a large workforce of civil servants directly employed by the authorities. Now let's stay in Myanmar, for the United Nations appealed for $826 million to meet the needs of 6.2 million people in Myanmar this year. According to the spokesman for the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, Jens Lerke, this is the largest appeal ever for the country.
The 2022 Humanitarian Response Plan for Myanmar has been published, requesting a record $826 million to reach 6.2 million people with assistance this year. The plan this year is more ambitious than last year's, asking more than twice the amount, and it reflects the growing crisis that has plunged an estimated 14.4 million people across the country into humanitarian need. 5 million of them are children.
United States regulators urged Pfizer to apply for emergency authorization for a 2-dose regime of its COVID-19 vaccine for children 6 months to 5 years old while awaiting data on a 3-dose course. The company's application was expected to be submitted as soon as this Tuesday. Early Pfizer data has shown the vaccine is safe and produces an immune response. The Food and Drug Administration is pushing the company to submit its application based on 2-dose data for a potential approval in February, and then to return for additional authorization once it has data from the 3rd-dose study, which is expected in March. The 2-step authorization process could mean that young children could be vaccinated more than a month earlier than previous estimates, assuming the FDA and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention greenlight the shots. We've come to the end of this news brief, but remember you can find these and many other stories on our website, teleSUR English. You can also follow us on social media for all the latest news. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. For teleSUR English, I'm Dio Martin. Thanks for watching.